Welcome, everyone. Happy New Year. This is an exciting time for us. It's becoming a tradition for us. This is our second annual New Year's Transformation Day with this crew. And I am deeply grateful for these humans, these women who say, yes, let's grow on New Year's Day. And to all of you out there, wow, saying yes to this day. We are grateful
Women
that you're
and
here.
Robert.
Oh, yes, yes, and Robert. Uh-huh. Love it, love it. And so, today I'm going to kick us off with an idea that gets us going into 2026 in a way that also feeds into something we support and create and do, which is called the Big Sky Literacy Summit. So, right away, I'm just going to pull up that slide and get us moving in that direction and make sure that we are truly thinking about what this day is about, which is about you. So here we go. This day is about activating genius. And a few months ago, I was thinking about Big Sky, and it gets to be this momentum that starts to happen in my life. I kind of get pings from all over the place. Like, what is the coherent message we're trying to reach this year at the Big Sky Literacy Summit? Last year was language is everything. And we start the momentum a good half a year before, if not a year before. And after language is everything, I realized that the ripple effects were real. They were substantial, they were visual, they were life-changing, they were happening in children's lives, teachers' lives, leaders' lives, districts' lives, nations' lives. And so when we have knowledge and we want to take knowledge to the next level, we have to activate genius. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first, I want to talk about the three humans who are on this call ready to deliver and inspire this morning. Very grateful that they chose to show up and grow today. Theresa Owens is coming live from Walla Walla, Washington. Thank you, Theresa. And we have Dawny Hill coming live from Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome, Dawny.
Welcome.
So
Thank you.
grateful. And Terrie Noland come live from Decatur, Texas. And thank you for coming in live from the South. And I'm coming live from Emigrant, Montana. And I am Dr. Nell, the founder of the Transformative Reading Teacher Group and the Big Sky Literacy Summit. And we do this because we're starting to really focus in on growth and what this work takes. It takes a lot of growth around so many things. And it's really mindset. And so, what is this idea of activating genius? What will Theresa, Dawny, Terrie, and I do today to inspire you to activate what this is? And what this is that it comes from a thought from Richard Rudd. He's a man who wrote something called The Gene Keys. And in that, I was reading it and I was like, this is it. This is what I want for everybody. This is what I want for the students we serve. This is what I want for the educators teaching them. This is what I want for all humans everywhere. Is this genius describes you living at your zenith. I just I, I know I'm not. And in fact, this last month I had a really crazy surreal event happened in my life, those once in a lifetime kind of really downer moments. And you're like, whoa, this just knocked me down. Like I am not living at my zenith. I am not in the momentum of my life. I am not even able to like eat food today. Like I can't get it all done. I can't show up. And and yet someday I'll get there. I'll come back to living into my zenith. So today is a reminder that we're all coming at this from different directions and different energy levels and different experiences and different things going on in our lives. But what we want to do is consider how it is you living your life without holding anything back and therefore transcending your fears. And about 2 weeks ago, I started to have this momentum of like, you know what? I just about lost everything. Why not just live my life as authentic to who I want to be and just let it all go and surrender to the joy of life? Why not just open up and do this, which is to be a genius, is to have the courage to live life with a heart, to just be me. I love this as a deep romance. I'm so in love with life. And I think for those of you who know me, you know I can get pretty in love with life and just be grateful for life and want to just dive in and climb a mountain and go into a cold plunge in a river. I was just thinking about doing that in the Yellowstone River, which I can see from my house, and how cold it would be, but how good it would feel. So your genius, it simply means just truly joyous living, and just we want to activate that in you. And because when you're tuned into your passion, your purpose, your desire to do what it is that lights you up, that lets that joy release happen, it's unstoppable.
Bob
And
Reed here.
it's just powerful. So what we want you to know is that activating genius is something that we're carrying into Big Sky. It's going to be all about disruption, activation, helping everybody live into their true potential. And that's going to be on August 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th. And I have to tell you, it's not really 4 days. What we did is we organized it so you could fly in on the first day. We'll start late afternoon, early evening, and you can fly home after we send you off in a morning celebration and knowledge cap. Okay. So it's a sandwich, the two powerhouse days in the middle, beginning on and ending on both sides, with just really lighting it up and sending you off. So we are so excited to activate Genius at Big Sky in August. And to kick this off today, I'm handing the baton off to Theresa Owens in Blast Off. Here you go, Theresa. You're on mute.
Well, of course, I was trying to be good because I was trying to be an example and mute myself while somebody else was talking, but then I got fired up. And that's what we're going to talk about, kind of getting fired up. Um, this activating genius is inspiring because I think it doesn't matter who you are, where you are in your life. I'm older than Danielle. It doesn't matter because I have genius inside of me that needs to be activated. And so I love that this is the theme. I love that it's the thing coming up. But what I'm going to talk to you about is a little just analogy about fireworks. As some of you might even imagine, I'm a bit of a pyromaniac. I love fire. I grew up with my parents had a beach house, and my sisters and I would go down and build a little fire. And the next thing you know, we were dragging like logs to this fire because we were the only ones on the beach. We had some great New Year's celebrations, um, midnight with giant bonfires and that. And so I like fire, but I love fireworks. And there are few things in life that make everyone just stop for a moment and stop what they're doing and look up. And fireworks is one of them. We all can remember those times when maybe we went to the picnic or we went to the big event, and there we were in a crowd. And what happens in a crowd when fireworks go off is you can't help it. Everybody says, "Ooh, ah, wow." It's just awesome. There's this universal thing about fireworks. No matter our age, background, title, we all stop and we all look up in awe because fireworks demand attention. They don't whisper, they announce themselves. They create this wonder. They don't blend in, they stand out. And interestingly, they don't last forever, but they leave a lasting impression. What if our lives were meant to be like that? We demand attention in a good way. We're not throwing a tantrum. We create a wonder, and we leave an impression long after that final burst. What makes them extraordinary isn't just the moment they explode, it's how they were built. Because I can imagine if I built a firework, I wouldn't have any idea. As a matter of fact, in order to do this analogy, I actually looked up a fair amount about how fireworks are made and how there's little balls that go in, there's little um, different kinds of explosive that goes in so that they do all the things that they are supposed to do. If they were just packed with, you know, that flammable material, all they would do is just make a big crack, boom, and that's it. So the layers are carefully placed. The timing is intentionally designed, and colors are created through knowledge and expertise. So if we think about that for ourselves, each of us has within us layers and layers and layers of knowledge, of background, of experience, and it all is put together so that we can create these beautiful moments. The timing is important. We all know that there is timing in our lives that isn't perfect. Danielle kind of referenced some of what she went through, and the timing isn't always right for us to completely shine. And we have to know, and we have to have expertise, or it's just going to be that big kaboom and nothing else. A firework isn't powerful at the moment it explodes. It was designed that way long before the launch. Your best selves aren't something that you have to invent. It's something you have to release. So ponder that for a second. It's not something you have to invent because it's already within you. You were designed in a special way. It's that launch and what happens. You are intentionally designed. Knowledge shapes your thinking. You are already equipped because practice builds that consistency. And your purpose is not accidental. Character determines your impact. We've read a lot of John Maxwell in our mentorship classes and that. And John Oz is famous, and I love this quote. It's growth doesn't just happen. It requires internal action. So excellence is not accidental. It's assembled piece by piece, bit by bit, moment by moment, experience by experience. And then at some point, it gets launched. So a firework, it only performs as well as it's built. Poor construction leads to misfires. I mean, how many have watched one of those YouTubes where something goes awry on the big tugboat and the fireworks are going all the wrong directions? I actually experienced this as a child. When I was about 13 years old, my dad won a trip. It was back in the days when if you were working for the company and you did a really good job, they sent your whole family to Hawaii. So I got to go to Hawaii because my sisters were in college and they couldn't go. So it was me and mom and dad on this pretty spectacular trip. Well, three of the presidents of the company got this idea that even though they were not experts in fireworks, that they could just buy a bunch of fireworks and make a show. And I'm telling you what, I still remember the screaming, not like, and nobody got hurt, but when they lit some of these things, they went off and these guys were on the boat. They were presidents of a stockbroker company. They had no idea what they were doing with fireworks. So these fireworks were probably well built, but they didn't have the knowledge, the aptitude, the understanding of what it takes to light off a show. Clearly, as a kid of 13, I thought it was pretty hilarious and monumental because I remember it to this day. I remember inappropriate words being spoken. I remember laughter. I remember my dad's expression. And I remember mostly my mom going, these guys are a bunch of idiots because they didn't know what to do. Now, we'll go back to that. I had to share that story because it's pretty hilarious. But poor construction leads to misfires. Knowledge, not knowing what you're doing, leads to misfires. Rushed design leads to disappointment. So if we don't take the time, if we don't work on things, if we don't grab what's inside us and line it up so that it can fire correctly, it's going to be a disappointment. My dad used to just say to me, you can't just go off half-cocked. You can't do that, Theresa. Because sometimes I just would have a great idea and not plan it, not prep it, not be ready for it. And it just wouldn't work out the way I wanted. So Stephen Covey says, you are not a product of your circumstances. You are a product of your decisions. So as we are growing, as we are learning, as we are developing, we got to make the right decisions. So what are you intentionally building into yourself right now? You're here today. So I think you're building the right things. But what are you building into yourself right now so that when pressure comes, the outcome is strong? Danielle alluded to some darkness in her life, a hard struggle. She talked about in the past. We've talked about I had breast cancer. So what do you build in yourself so that when that pressure comes and when it hits you, the outcome is still strong? This is for school. This is for state departments. This is for life, people. What are you building into yourself right now? So when that pressure comes, the outcome is strong. Okay. The next thing you have to do is think about the fact that we could get all the fireworks in the world and set them on that barge. And if nobody goes out and lights them and starts that spark and activates them, nothing is going to happen. You have to activate what was already designed in order for it to impact. So we can have knowledge, and we all know these people with tons of knowledge, people with a lot of experience, but people that don't have the courage to light the spark. I knew Danielle when she was knee-high to a pup. Well, not quite, but I knew her at the beginning of her career. And Danielle has been a person that has never been afraid to light the spark. She learns something, she grabs it, she lights the spark, she shares it, and then boom, she goes after another thing. So in your passion, in your life, what's inside of you? Is it a challenge? What's your spark? Is it a challenge? Is it a calling? Is it a moment of discomfort that pushes you beyond your limits? Is it a decision to say, I'm not going to play small anymore. I'm going big. The famous go big or go home. I'm a go big person. Terrie Noland is a go big person. Dawny is a go big person. All these people that I know on this talk right now, you're big, you're go big people. And I love that. I love spending time with you every week on mentorship. Courage starts with showing up and letting ourselves be seen and letting that spark thing happen. Georgia Dare says, everything you want is on the other side of fear. So don't be afraid. Light it up. John Maxwell says, growth doesn't just happen. It requires intentional action. So is there a spark that you've been ignoring because maybe it feels uncomfortable? The spark doesn't create the greatness. That's the stuff on the inside. Remember our firework. But it reveals it because once that candle is lit, it's going to explode. Another interesting piece about fireworks is, we don't launch fireworks at noon and get amazed. It just doesn't happen. Now, Danielle and I spent some time in Alaska, and 4th of July, there's no big fireworks because it's a waste of money. Now, New Year's, When it's dark, people do it. But otherwise, nobody's launching fireworks because it's daylight at midnight. It's daylight pretty much all night long. So you don't light that firework at noon and expect to be amazed. Dark seasons, those things that challenge us, those things that make us say, I got to dig deep into the deepest part of me and be the best me I can be. Those are the things that sharpen your perspective, that strengthen your resolve, that help you clarify your values. I know there's some other people on here that have been diagnosed with cancer before. There is something to be said about sitting in the little room when the doctor is doing either the ultrasound or whatever, and hmm, this isn't like something else I've had before. This isn't where they're clicking buttons and writing measurements down, and you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, this is not good. And you face yourself with something that you're like, you know what? I'm coming out on the other side of this because that's who I am. It's that resolve. You clarify those values. How am I going to fight this? What am I going to do to make a difference? What am I going to do to change outcomes? It reveals our resilience. It strengthens our faith. I was hanging on for dear life to my faith. And you know what? It brought me through. It prepares us for impact, that darkness. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That's Viktor Frankl. And lastly, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. That's John 1:5. So difficulty isn't the opposite of growth. It's often the environment where growth becomes visible. And darkness is not the absence of purpose. It's a backdrop for brilliance. So not every firework looks the same, you guys. So here's my challenge to you this new year. Do you boom loudly and fill the sky? Are you one that rises quietly and shimmers a bit? Do you crackle soft and linger? Or are you the favorite one of mine where they zip and dance and twirl? Bzz, remember those ones? And they're just twirling around. I love those. Be yourself, you guys. Everybody else is already taken. Your best self doesn't need to look like anybody else. It just needs to be authentically you. Remember, fireworks that take our breath away are not rushed. They are built carefully. They are launched intentionally, and they are trusted to do what they're designed to do. They don't apologize for their light. They don't ask the sky, is it okay if I go up here and shine? They rise, they ignite, and they give everything they have right where they are. So let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. I'm a believer, so that's what I'm going to say. Let your light shine. Keep building your knowledge. Keep strengthening your character. Keep preparing even when no one is watching. And when the moment comes, light the fuse. And that's all I got for you today. Light that candle, folks.
Woohoo! Thank you,
Thank
Teresa.
you, Teresa. All I've got to say there is bam, boom.
Mic
Yeah.
drop. I don't know what else to say. We could get off now, Teresa, and just be wiser for it. Amazing.
You're
Abs-
definitely the zippy, the
You know
twisty.
those ones, don't you?
That's definitely you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's me.
I actually, as you were talking, Teresa, there is this quote that I use a lot talking about kind of the same thing, be the firework. I'm going to drop it in the chat just because I think it's such a powerful thing. I went and I just grabbed it off of an old slide I'd had. But it talks about be the mad ones. And here are all of the individuals here on this call on New Year's Day. You're the mad ones, not in a bad way. You're the mad ones that go and shine bright like those Roman candles and just burn, burn, burn. Because here's what I'll say. Where is everybody else? See, it's our job to show up, but don't stop there. Then go show up, light up the sky, and lead others the path that we all need to take. So, Theresa, that's what I got out of your talk just now. Any other thoughts, Dawny, down?
I'm excited for Donnie to take off.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
There we
Yes.
go.
What kind of firework are you, Donnie? Let's see it.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm all about a day one firework. And if you all, so good to be with you all again this year. If you think a year ago today, one thing that we talked about and that was important to me was to make it a day one and not a 1 day experience if you all were on the call. And so I'm hoping that you had some powerful examples of how you use your day one thinking all throughout the year because we know that there are so many goals that we want to pursue and so many possibilities ahead of us that I just want you to take a moment of reflection to think about maybe one or two things that you moved forward with last year. Sometimes we think about all the things, but just think and just put one or two things in your mind that of what you can be very proud of what you've accomplished. Give you a moment just to think about that. And as you have those thoughts in your mind, first, I want to tell you congratulations because you have done it. You have done a thing and it was a good thing. I also know possibly during your reflection, your mind wanted to highlight the tasks that you possibly started and didn't finish, or that you thought about starting and didn't get going on yet. Our minds will sometimes take us past those accomplishments and take us to the things that we should feel bad about, right? As Theresa mentioned, those things that we want to happen very quickly and that we want it to grow very quickly, but it needs to be in it needs to be in a slow cooker, right? It needs to be something that we're continuing to grow and to build over time. So as we move forward this year, I want to encourage you, it's time to move forward and to go deeper. We have the commitment to ourselves, and we have to make a commitment to ourselves to work on deepening our goals and desires that may be within us. And Nell talked about this, activating our genius. There are things that if we said out loud to some people, we might be afraid that they may judge us or that they don't agree with us. And we now have to move past the day one of what we think of other people are, what they're going to say and how they're going to respond. And we have to dig in of why day one is perfect, but we've got to get to day two and day three and day four in this process. And that sometimes is a challenge for us. So there is a book that I have read a couple of times, and maybe some of you have read it. I know Terrie mentioned she just finished it. And this book has had such a huge impact because I keep on reading it over because I feel like it's one that's helping me shift my mindset toward moving forward, whether it's be about relationships or career or health. And this book is entitled The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. And I'm not sure, once again, if you've heard about it or if you've read it. If you have not, I would encourage you to put it on your list. And in this theory, there are two components. There's a let them, and then there's a let me. So as we think about moving into a new year, right? A new year signifies a time of reset, of fresh beginnings, a fresh start, an opportunity to start at day one, because this is day one of this new year. And so, because of this, we will often use this time to reset and focus on moving forward. And as we also mentioned, to activate our genius. I love that. I am activating some genius in me this year. I'm going to grab a hold of that and I'm going to keep on going. But let's shift back to the theory of let them. So the first part of this is let them basically. So often we get stuck in our old practices and our old ways, and we know that from our experiences in the educational world, possibly even our own personal lives, right? We get stuck with what others, allowing others' ideals, their thoughts, their beliefs to keep us from showing up and moving forward with the task and the mindset that we know is right for us. And Dr. Nell, Terrie, Theresa have all encouraged us that we have to transform our thinking and our practices. We have to move forward. We have to continue to activate that which is in us. We have to do the work and we cannot pitch a tent. Theresa just mentioned that. And I always say this, we cannot pitch a tent where we are. So this is where let them comes into practice. Now we have to we can't let others' ideas and their behaviors bother us. We can't let them control us because the source of our power is not managing others and having them manage us. And I think sometimes, and I will agree to this, sometimes I get so overwhelmed by what others think or what others believe, that it is so hard to remind myself that I am in control of what happens to me next, not someone else's thoughts and their feelings. So this is where I then have to say, let them. Let them have their own thoughts and their feelings. Let them, as Theresa said, we are all unique beings, and I can't duplicate anybody else, nor can they duplicate me. My purpose is mine, your purpose is yours. So we have to think about when we allow others to distract and to dictate our decisions and our actions about how we support students, about how we show up in those uncomfortable situations, when we, regardless of whether our beliefs about literacy development, language development are like theirs, about what evidence-based instructional practices are effective for all readers, the role of language. We can think of so many times that we've come against these uncomfortable conversations, whether it be with colleagues or others, about the things that they believe versus the things that we know to be true based off of evidence-based practices. And we fight the good language and literacy fight every day. I know you all are right there with us. And so now I realize that I'm not always going to be able to change the mindset of the teacher next door or change the mindset of the principal or that perspective that's in the classroom. Now, this does not mean that we don't continue to try to do what we need to do to get the word out, to acknowledge what it is that we know to be true. What it does mean is that we have to acknowledge that their decision is their decision at this point. But what we can't do is control their response and reactions and then allow that to be crippling. And we pitch a tent right there where they are because we just feel like, we can't do it, or, how are we going to move past this? So we have to let them, and then we have to focus on what we can do. Because if we just say let them, right, that places the superiority of our thoughts and feelings onto someone else. And that's not the point. We've got to take ownership. So saying let them helps me deal with like that emotional response that I usually have when someone doesn't agree or they're doing the same old, and we know children's lives are impacted, and they really, we know that that's the future of it. But it really helps me paint a clearer picture of why I might feel the way that I feel. That's the let them part. But we have to encounter the next step. So we say, let them, okay? We can't change their thoughts and feelings at this moment. Hopefully, what we're doing, that they're going to see that model and that we're going to be the change and we're going to do all the things. But that is going to be something that we can't decide. Like we plant the seed, but we may not see the harvest from that seed. It could be someone 2, 5 years, 10 years down the line. We've got to plant the seed that we know that should be planted. But then we have to encounter the next step, which is we have to be in control of ourselves. So Mel Robbins notes that I have to then let me, which is a self-awareness, it's my responsibility, it's my personal empowerment. I can control myself. Once again, it doesn't mean that we don't continue to have the hard conversations, and I'll keep on saying that because we do. That's why we're in this fight. We have to continue to have that. We just don't let others and the silent treatment and the talks behind our backs, we don't let them dictate what our next step needs to be. We have to focus on what we need to do, and this is when we have to commit to going deeper on our end. We may have, gotten stuck in the let them phase too often. I know I have, and I've chalked it up to my lack of next step, or this person is not behind me, or, whatever the case may be. But once again, I can't let their behavior or their decision impact what I believe and what I know to be true. So that's why I have to let me. So I have a couple of questions for you. What are the areas in your life that you're allowing others' ideas, their thoughts, their experiences dictate your next deeper step or your next best step? When have we given our power of this time to someone else? Then the next question is who or what are you allowing to stand in the way of you taking your next best step to go deeper? We've got mentorship happening. What and who is taking and is standing in your way, or is it yourself that's not allowing you to move forward, to go to that next best step, to go deeper? Because I have seen myself in the same. How many of you all are with me that the year has passed and you see yourself in the same place that you were that the year before? Right? You see yourself moving forward in some areas, but in then other areas, you just have not taken that step. You've not allowed yourself to move forward and to go deeper. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's judgment, whatever the case may be. What is it that we can identify that can help us move forward? Because once we identify it, right, we can identify it and we can move forward from that identification. Doesn't mean it changes, but I think that there's some power in identifying it, calling it what it is, and then saying, okay, that's exactly what it is. Now I got to keep on moving forward, right? Understanding and identifying that elephant that may be sitting on you that you're saying, I can't get up because this elephant is too big. And it's like, okay, well, what else can we do with it? So it also reminds me that maybe it's that we have a fear that if we do move forward, that we're going to leave others behind. Those who have been with us, those who have supported us all along. But I just want to remind you that not everyone is supposed to go with you to your next level, and that's okay. They were there for a purpose in the level that you were in, but now it's time for you to move to your next level and give them the opportunity to move to their next level as well, whatever that might be. It may look differently from yours. So, as we think about it and we say that, let them, and then we empower ourselves to say, now let me, we make room for ourselves as well as for others. Theresa just said this, our best self is not something that I have to invent, but it's something that I must release. Woo, that's powerful. We have to release it inside of us. No one else is going to do it. Mel Robbins says in her book, she said, if you are waiting for someone else to come in to save you, no one is coming. Because to be transparent, isn't that the heavy lifting that we have to do? It's the mentorship that we have to do. Danielle, Dr. Nell is not going to come and be in your classroom and do the work for you, but she can support you through the work that you are supposed to do. The same for Terrie, the same for the people who are beside you in your cohorts. We have to do the work, and we've got people who come along beside us, but they can't do the heavy lifting for us. Now, they can help bear the load sometimes, but we got to identify our own loads that we have. But because we say let them, and I think of myself, sometimes if I just stay on let them, doesn't it mean that I'm giving myself kind of that permission to have breathing room, maybe to focus on something else or focus on nothing at all, right? It gives me to say, I just can't believe, right? When we say that and we look to someone and say, I just can't believe they're doing this, it kind of gives me the little push to be able to say, oh, I can't do that right now. Man, it's on them. I can't do that because someone else didn't do this. It gives me permission to pitch a tent where I am, but we can't pitch a tent. We've got to move forward with let me. So if this is difficult for you, and for some of us, like myself, we have so many plates that are all full that we can't even focus on what plate to start with and what plate that we even need to move forward with. Well, maybe for others of us, we can't get past our emotional responses to others' decisions and actions that we find ourselves just truly stuck where we are. Just know that all that we have to do is consider the moving forward. It's one step at a time. So if we're not moving forward, we're thinking, oh, the politicians, oh, it's them, oh, it's the school board members, it's the administrators, oh, it's our district leaders, oh, it's the teachers beside me. They're not working emotionally. That's us. They're doing this as business. And so we have to then make strategic moves like they're making strategic moves. And we have to respond and say, you know what? My responses are emotional. I'm not moving forward. Maybe it's emotional. Maybe it's not. We've got to detach those emotions from our decisions and our actions. And we have to find ways to protect our peace and to find our own power. If we can't make those big changes, what can we do? As Theresa said, we have to activate what is already designed within us. So as we find ourselves turning to the person beside us saying, can you believe? I just cannot. Oh my goodness, what is going to be the next thing that an administration does or that someone else's does? Our focus has now been stolen. So, how can we change our responses to these situations? Because our reactions are going to be automatic, right? We're going to automatically have that visceral reaction to things. We've got to own it. And we can't let this stop us because it's time to move deeper and to move forward. We know that those stressful and irritating situations are going to happen, but we don't have to let them overtake us. We don't have to allow this to be something that next year, this time, we're saying, oh, I shoulda, coulda, woulda, but I didn't because I let them, but I didn't let me. So I want you to think for a moment to finish this statement. We know we can say, let them. Okay, now let them. Now let me do what? That's your dot dot dot. Let me, you fill in the rest of that. What is it this year that you're going to commit to? As Dr. Nell said, activating your genius. How are you going to activate that genius? There are going to be things and people that we cannot control. And others are, their thoughts and actions may not be like ours. But what are we going to do to use our own power and to keep our own power to moving forward? We have the opportunity. We're in day one. What are we going to do? Day two, day three, up to day 365. We've got an entire year to move forward in our line of work, to move language, literacy outcome forward, all the things that we're here to do. So we can't continue to wish on it. We've got to make this, we've got to be a part of the change. I think it's Nelson Mandela, be the change you want to see. We have to do that. So let me. Now, I want you to drop it in the chat. Let me, whatever that is, let me. I want you to add it. And here's the question. Um, not Doctor, but Mel Robbins talks about in her book, there's this poem, the summer day poem, and the person author who is Mary Oliver says, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And I want to add to that, and I'm going to end with this. What do you plan to do with your individualized power, your wisdom, and your knowledge? And I'm going to add one more, your genius this new year. Let them, however, find time to plan how you will let me. Okay. And me is general. We're all saying let me. So I'm going to end there. And I hope that you have a fantastic start to this new year. And I'm so excited to be engaging with you all and to see how you're going to let you this year.
Woohoo, Dawny. Thank you so much. We just need more Dawny, right? I mean, she's amazing, right? We love her, love her, love her. I met her, I don't even, Dawny, are we almost at a decade? No, we're not, but it's close.
It's
Um,
close. We're getting there.
we're getting there. And we have been through some really fun valleys and highs together. And I think My joys of just being with this team of humans is how we all grow so differently. And I think Teresa's message about being that firework that has variation and whatever that is to you. And then Donnie just helping us take our mind into a deeper space of saying, wow, what does it really mean to let them while I truly engage my genius and rise into my potential, that whatever that is doesn't have to stop what
Yeah.
my work forward is, right, Donnie?
That's good. That's good now. Yes. Mm.
I just am really grateful. And Mel Robbins has been in my life for a while. Is her high five habits. I'd wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and like high five myself and you go, girl, because that's a book before Let Them Theory.
Yes.
And so I'm just really grateful you brought that one to the table. If y'all haven't read that book, I think Donnie's given us a good preview of why we should read that book, and really letting go. And Donnie, one question for you. You're in your dissertation right now.
I am.
This book helping you navigate that journey?
Yeah. It's helping me focus that I'm not pitching a tent here. Graduation is happening in May, and I have got to pull, I know. Woo! Thank you. Thank you. This year starting, I'm like, I'm graduating this year. Yes. But it just reminds me that I have to, and I dropped it in here as we've talked about, we've got to reclaim our own genius. I did not do this just to have an extra set of letters added to my name, and I've got to know what that means for me. And so that is let me, my classmates, everyone, that is let them, how we all respond. But the let me is to know that I have got to move forward with what my plan needs to be. What is my genius, activating my genius going to be? And how is that going to add worth and value to this career that we all are in, right? That we're all doing. So that is really giving me an extra push in this end of this time, in the end of this season, really.
I love it. Can you tell everybody what you're focused on? Because I think it's
Yes.
meaningful.
Yes. So I'm getting my doctorate in education with an emphasis of reading science, and my focus right now is preschool curriculum development. It starts with them, right? It starts with those itty bitty babies. And but what are we putting before them? And so that is my focus. I've created a tool to help um, those individuals really look at how we can get our preschoolers prepared. That doesn't mean they have to be reading in preschool. I'm not saying this, but we got to prepare them. We got to give them what they need. So that is my focus, and I'm excited to see what this dissertation and what all of this will mean when I finish up. So
I'm
exciting,
loving that
exciting times.
because you're going to help contribute to something that I've been asked to do, and it's just a big reminder that we're all in this together to
Yeah,
have one big, loving collective effect on the future of humanity
that's
with
good.
our wisdom and our genius. And you've always been a genius activator for me, and I'm really grateful. And so, with that, should we activate someone else's genius right now?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Terrie Noland. She's going to be talking about the thinking brain. You know what? I think this title, I don't even know what she's going to talk about, but I already think the title tells us she's going to help us let me by thinking about how to let me, because it's through thinking that we might activate that. I'm just
Yeah.
hypothesizing. I don't know, but we're going to let Terrie take it away. Go, girl.
Let's do it, Terry.
You're you're hypothesizing very well. And in fact, the setup has already been amazing because here we've been hearing about Theresa talking about the genius that's already inside of us, and we've just got to release it. And then here Dawny comes in talking about the let them, but actually the gist of the whole book that I just finished, the Mel Robbins book that Dawny talked about, is it's let me, as Dawny explained so beautifully there. It's about let me. So it's let me be the one that unlocks my genius. See, so often we are waiting for that rescue that has been already mentioned. I'm waiting for somebody to come in and rescue and save me. But actually, it's my brain that is going to save myself. So I just have started a book. I'm several chapters in, and it is by T.D. Jakes called Disruptive Thinking. And this is what got me thinking about the thinking brain. So often we hear and talk about, my goodness, all of us here are always talking about the reading brain. But ultimately, aren't we trying to create the thinking brain for children, for adults? The thinking brain. And you know what? Thinking, I truly believe, and this is a Terrie Noland belief, and I'm sure there's research out there to back it up, but we don't think like we should because we allow our brains to be clouded with chaos, clouded with so much overwhelm that we do not protect our time to think. So the thinking brain is where we get good decisions. The thinking brain is where we make really planned, good, purposeful moves in our lives. And so in the book, T.D. Jakes has this quote. I think it's just brilliant. He says this. He says, "We are born looking like our parents. We die looking like our decisions." Wow. Isn't that good? Because isn't it true? This one beautiful, wonderful, explosive life that I get to live, I come into it as a product of my mom and my dad, and I leave as a product of what I chose. So this thinking brain, the thinking brain that allows us to love, to make decisions, to lead well, that's what we're going to be talking about for the next few minutes. You know, in the world that we live in literacy, I say all the time, the thinking that got us to where we are today is not the thinking that is going to get us to where we need to be. Because the thinking that got us here with our low proficiency rates, with not attending to everything that we need to be attending to, we're good at foundational skills, but what about language? See, that thinking that got us here is not the same thinking that's going to get us there. And the there is what we are all striving for. We all have that big vision in our heads of how many children are going to be proficient, engaged individuals, thinkers. So we can't rely on the same thinking. This is where T.D. Jakes is talking about we've got to be disruptive thinkers. But one of the things he goes on to say is, I'm not talking about destructive thinking. See, when we think about destructive thinking, we almost think of somebody with malicious intent. And of course, we know that happens in this world. But destructive thinking in the world that we live in schools, in classrooms, literacy, destructive thinking is saying, it's okay. We're better than the school down the street. Oh, wow. We finally got to 65%. We're good to go now. We're going to coast from here on out. That's destructive thinking. That's not good, positive thinking that needs to get us to that final stretch. Or what about chaotic thinking? Chaotic thinking is not going to get us anywhere either. Chaotic thinking is we've all been in this situation. Oh, we're going to get the new tool. That new tool is going to solve everything. Oh, the new tool didn't work after the first year. Let's be chaotic and rip it out and do something new. And that's chaotic thinking. We've got to have quiet, steady, consistent, compounded, effective thinking that's going to get us to the end goal. Danielle and I talk a lot about, the interactions that we have with, being out at conferences, speaking, even on webinars. I've done a lot of webinars. And it seems that there are a couple of consistent questions that get asked in a webinar. And the very first one that gets asked is, well, there's one that gets asked, where's my CE certificate? And I could talk about that for a hot minute about, come on, be here to learn first. You'll get that thing later. But another one that comes up is, just tell me the strategy that works. Just tell me what it is. I'm serving children with dyslexia. Just what's the one strategy that's going to get it done? That is very low level thinking. And I am not, we've probably all been there. I've been there. Come on. I started there. So I'm not dismissing individuals that start there. If we leave our thinking to say, just tell me the one thing, we're never going to get to success. We're never going to get to great and brilliant outcomes, because I have to have thinking that says that I've got this tool. I've got these resources. We've got this level of knowledge from our teachers. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to adjust and pivot and move and be agile? See, I can't rely. We said nobody's coming to save us. Guess what? Curriculums are not coming to save us. Strategies are not coming to save us and our children. It is the thinking between the ears and eyes that's going to be the thinking that gets it done. And so what do I mean by that? So often we don't put enough emphasis or importance on how do we move past that then? Tell me what to do. How do I get past, this thinking of just let's be saved by a curriculum or a strategy? And in all the study and reading this book by T.D. Jakes and just following mentors in my life, it always comes down to this single component. And it's the magic. But so very, not so very often do we pull the thread on the magic. And here it is. I'm giving it to you. And I am saying, pull the thread on this magic. And the magic is, who will I surround myself with? That's the magic. Because disruptive thinking, the thinking brain only gets better by the people you surround yourselves with. And in his book, what T.D. Jakes always talks about, it's not the person that thinks like me. Because if I only get in a room with a person that thinks like me, guess what we're going to do? We're going to get really good at thinking like we always thought. I have to surround myself with individuals, with mentors, with books, with research, with people and individuals that allow me to up-level my thinking. Who am I going to surround myself with? So, we talk about this a lot, the importance of relationships and education. And here's where I'm saying that's the magic. And we don't lean into the magic enough. We allow our thinking brain to get into this complacency mode. And we can't do that. Get in rooms where we are willing to think with other individuals. And who are those individuals going to be in our lives? In planning and preparing for events that we do, we are always putting names out on the table. Always. Like, who can we help? We can bring in here. Who can we bring in here? Always putting names out on the table. The power in our thinking is who we surround ourselves with. And then the second thing here is the thinking brain gets better when I think about others. When I think about others. That's when my thinking brain gets really good. See, when we say disruptive thinking or helping us understand the thinking brain, we often are like, oh yeah, I get what you're talking about. It is those people over there that have some magic within them that I don't have within me, that have the resources, that have everything over there in their corner that I don't have. And they think big things like, the Kennedy saying we're going to put a man on the moon. Oh, that's because it was Kennedy. He is way different than I ever could be. No, he wasn't. He had the same firework inside of him that we have inside of us. It's who's going to pull the string? Who's going to make it happen? And so this second thing here, the first is who am I going to surround myself with? But second, who am I going to add value to? Who am I going to build up? Who am I going to talk to today? Who am I going to be intentional with today? It is always who. This is where our thinking brain gets good. And this is where my thinking brain says, I'm not going to ask about what's the best curriculum. Of course, we can have good conversations around that, but curriculum's not going to save me. Teams of individuals are going to come together around the resources and the tools that we have that do our best thinking. There is a Harvard researcher, Amy Edmondson is her name, and I think we all know her work. We may not know her name, but we know her work. And in her dissertation, she was trying to ask, well, she had this hypothesis, and here was the hypothesis. Do better teams have fewer errors? So like looking at the medical field, or it was also based on prior research by her dissertation chair who had done work in aviation, thinking about teams. Do better teams have fewer errors? And so she set out to do her research, did a team diagnostic survey, and got all these characteristics of teamwork and what makes really good teams. And her hypothesis, basically, she was expecting the results to say, absolutely, better teams, you get way fewer errors. But she found the opposite. The better the team, the more errors. Wow. What do you mean? The better the team, the fewer errors. So she had to question the outcome of her research. And the outcome of her research basically is where she invented this idea of psychological safety. The better the team, the more psychological safety you had with individuals, the more that you come together, your thinking gets good and fast and agile, and you're not so afraid of making mistakes that you make more mistakes and you learn in those mistakes. Like, isn't that pretty profound? And so think about who you're surrounding yourself with and who you're adding value to and building these teams to get really good thinking. Do you have psychological safety? Because when you have that, you can go quicker, faster, you're more agile in this thinking. So it was just a profound research that she's done to help us understand, because we've all been in situations where the people we're surrounding ourselves with actually stalls our thinking, detracts our thinking to maybe negative thoughts. There's no psychological safety. And it's us. We're the mad ones. We're the ones. Let me be the ones to create these teams, these environments, because if not you, then who? Who's going to do it? We're the ones that get to do it. So in closing, I just want to leave you with this about the thinking brain. And your thinking brain is first built in those quiet, peaceful moments that you create. You get to create it. You control your schedule. I don't. I don't determine when you get out of bed. I don't determine when you go to bed. You do. Your brilliant thinking brain is created in those moments so that you can go and build quiet, micro moments with relationships with other people that just kaboom the thinking altogether. So hopefully in this new year, you'll take those thoughts and pull that string, bring the magic and really begin to think about who is going to be in your corner, who you're bringing in. My job is to build these teams and to release your thinking brain.
Oh, Terry, I have to say that that was wonderful, A. And B, yesterday, just yesterday, I had this epiphany when I was preparing my talk that what if we started every literacy reform, everything we've done through the 90s and the 2000s and on with how do we think? How do we create psychological safety? How do we have hard conversations? How do we prepare to fail? Because in learning new things, we're going to fail. And I think for everybody who's in a comprehensive literacy state development project or who did reading first in the past or did any of these things, we have started with knowledge first and not how humans work together
Mhm.
and not how this is hard work in terms of human psychological safety and teaming and anyways it led me on a big tangent about Terry and I just wrote an article recently and I thought we should have put that in our article because it's like moving away from the command control comply culture of being a leader into a collective empowered courageous humble collaborator as a leader. And that is somebody who's willing to think with others, right? So,
Absolutely. It's protect my own brain, my thinking brain, and then get my thinking brain in a team with other people. That's where we're going to get good.
hmm
Yeah.
and and as we age, I don't know about all y'all, but there's something that happened when I hit 50 that was like, like John Maxwell always says, he's like, the best idea wins. I think early in my life, I wanted my idea to win for sure.
Mhm.
And now I'm just like fascinated by how cool the ideas are, the more people talk. And the more you start to be generative and allow yourself to be in a space of generative creativity and activating that genius in everybody, all of a sudden the pistons start firing faster and higher, and the engine turns into an F1 race car. And you're like, wait a second, we're going so much faster than I expected. And it's like, but that's the excitement of collective effect. Collective effect is something that takes hold only in those moments. That only happens when people can synergistically have that psychological safety and make those kind of things happen. So awesome. Thanks for that inspired talk and your revelations and wisdom. And it kind of just leads right into where I'm going. So might as well just take it away, right?
Yeah, go for it.
So again, for those of you jumping, this last talk is we're going to do two more pieces and hopefully sign off in another 40 minutes or less, actually. And what that means is that this is recorded. So if you are jumping off, just know that and know that we are actually here to support you in any way. So we have mentorship, we have recordings if you want to keep learning this knowledge, and that's what we're putting into the chat box. So just know that those are opportunities that you can grab onto, and we're making them the most affordable they've been all year. So that is an opportunity you can take up too. So with that, I'm riffing off on something that has been close to my heart for the last a year and a half. Let the mentorship group know that I would finish this topic on New Year's Day in December, and I'm keeping my word. I'm staying integrous to my word, and I'm evolving this thinking that started at the ASHA convention. That is the American Speech and Hearing Association. And I had the moment of speaking with many state leaders around speech and language work at state level. In convening with my colleague Doug Peterson, we were being asked how we are moving work forward in assessment and, well, basically universal screening and instruction in oral language. And it was in that meeting that I actually was so inspired to go back to my hotel room and rewrite my talk for the next day. Now, ASHA has these very big guidelines. Your talk has to be submitted like 6 months ahead of time, all this stuff. So I had to stay within my guidelines. However, I could rewrite the narrative to share a message that I want to share today. And the reason for this is because what I was hearing in that day was something profound, was that it was in this collaborative genius effect everybody was activating, that the way we can move forward is through communication and the use of language to promote language. And that what was hindering people is old language, old paradigms, old belief systems. And so, how was I going to help reshape the future if I didn't set a tone for a new belief system and a new way of talking about things? So, what I offer you today is that. So, here we go. I have a PowerPoint because I had to write one, right, for ASHA. So you guys have the benefit of getting my PowerPoint today. So the evolution in literacy starts with language. This talk is about me doing something, but what I'm going to say is that I want you to know that this is for you to keep standing firmly in your knowing, whatever that knowing is that comes out of this day to day, whatever this New Year's new beginning, day one experience is for you, so you can let you rise into your potential. Just know that the work doesn't need to stop or soften in whatever you're doing. Maybe you're right on the right track and you need to let them be who they're going to be, and you need to let you keep moving with momentum. And it also needs leadership that aligns systems with how language develops. Is one of the things I know that I'm taking a stance on, that ASHA taught me to deeply take a stance on. Not just because I'm a speech language pathologist, not just because I'm a leader with a language bias. I actually deeply understand, more than I have ever understood before, that the human brain is built on language. It is a language brain first. And our systems, our entire ecosystem, if I walk into that ecosystem and stand in that belief and stand in that knowing, that ecosystem will align around that new layer of understanding, which is knowing that oral language comes first. So I was telling Terry the other day that I love this thought that when a lion walks into the savannah, any part of it, the ecosystem arranges around it. The animals move differently. The king has arrived. The knowledge has arrived that this animal can stand and just be, and the ecosystem changes. And I think that's a quiet leadership. It's a peaceful leadership. It's a knowing. And I want you to know that at the end of this session today, that's what I deeply want for you, is to know that language is a foundation. And how could that contribute to a shift in a bigger, brighter, more evolved future for literacy? So part one, my argument for the system evolution, okay? So this is giving you the language to argue this evolution. Now, 2000 marks a day in the year of my life when I was in my graduate program for speech and language. I was under the tutelage of a lovely human being named Susan Moore, and I actually love her more now than I did then, I'll be honest. She was a very hard teacher, but great teacher. Susan was a Juris Doctor and a speech language pathologist. That means she was a lawyer and SLP, and that allowed her to be in the space of advocacy. She did a lot of authoring. She taught me a class that was very important. And in this class on theories of language development, I wrote this note. A good theory should tell us all the specifics of the disorder. That note really hit me. You know, here I was preparing for a very big talk and moment in my life at the American Speech and Hearing Association. I wanted to go back to what I learned in my speech and language programming. And I wanted to try to figure out what the difference was in what I learned about language and what educators learned about language. And it was this one nugget that a good theory, that theories allow us to predict what we do not know and what we do know, and they should tell us about the specifics of a disorder. gosh, it really led me to think of the simple view. It led me to think of the reading rope. It led me to think of all the things that educators and leaders are using across the country to help ground their understanding in the science of reading and how we teach children to read. Well, then the next thing, I turn the page in my notes and it says stages of critical thinking. And my notes say, first thing, demand the truth and nothing but the truth. I thought, well, that just sounds like a good old Tom Cruise movie, I think it was. And I just was kind of chuckling. But, I was like, you know what? That's where I am in life. Right now, I want to demand the truth. I really think that this piece is huge. I don't think that the whole language movement in the 70s got it all wrong. I think the truth of what they got was that contextualized language experience is the core of our human existence. However, some children don't have that contextualized, rich language experience, and therefore their human brain needs the explicit, systematic instruction in language. So our theories are pointing to a disorder. And I actually want the truth to come out. I think what happened in the shift out of whole language into the future is that we have to reconcile the benefits of what they taught us. Our nation has developed a systematic disorder in how we conceptualize literacy, actually. And the root cause is this. So I was taught that if that framework, if that model, if that theory had all the components, I could actually figure out what the root cause was or what the diagnosis would be. So I'm thinking simple view, word reading, language comp, reading comprehension. Okay, so it's what part of it is teaching me about the diagnosis? Like I really had to start thinking. So what it said to me is that the root cause is this. We've separated literacy from language. We've separated them. We made literacy about teaching words and language this other thing called oral language instruction that most dominantly gets taught with our students learning the English language and students who maybe have a less enriched environmental experience prior to coming to school. Now, I'm calling this MTSSLD. This is our new diagnosis. That we are living in a world that is a multi-tiered system of support. We've created a system of prevention without considering language development. I think this is a diagnosis that we all can understand very clearly. And it has a few key characteristics, and these are the characteristics. We've begun universal screening too late. We've systematically started universal screening at kindergarten, and that's okay because we have to start somewhere. However, what we missed was that universal screening has always started with these things. It starts with the sub-skills and not the system that generates those sub-skills. It starts with alphabetic knowledge and phonological development, but not the third pillar or the first pillar, which is oral language. MTSS Tier 1 and 2 lack oral language clarity and explicit instruction. They oftentimes overfocus on word reading, and most interventions are there as well. Our caseloads for our interventionists and our SLPs swell because the system has misdiagnosed, misserves, it misservices children for word reading and the difficulties that are comorbid with word reading. And oral language itself, the screening itself and the instruction is an afterthought once students cannot read or comprehend. Now, consistently, as I've coached in schools across the nation, we get through our data meetings and we have students that have gone through many word reading intensive weeks of intervention and they get core instruction. And we're like, what else is going on? What else could be happening? And like, well, maybe let's screen some other things. And that's when oral language usually gets brought in. If you look at some of our assessments, some of our very reliable and valid assessments, their next layer of screening is language. It's not the first layer. Interesting. So how did we get here? We've relied on ideas that are partially true. but they are incomplete. That's what I'm going to say about that. We've relied on this one, that the human brain is hardwired for oral language, that reading and writing are not hardwired and must be explicitly taught. So that we've relied on this idea that humans have all the wiring for language, therefore they do not need explicit systematic instruction, but over here, the brain needs to be wired for reading and writing. What if we said the human brain is not hardwired for oral language, but rather it is hardwired for the potential to develop language. And potential always depends on input, interaction, and instruction. Okay? So now the students we serve, we're seeing them as potential, and it's our job to activate that genius. It's our job to see that the inputs that they've had and the inputs we give, the interaction they've had and the interaction we foster, and the instruction they've had and the instructional pathways we create will change their lives. The next layer of how did we get here is that MTSS, as that prevention system, it lacks an early integrated language foundation. It actually did not start with language. Now, I know MTS is a framework. I know it's a prevention system, but if we're talking reading, if we're talking social emotional development, if we're talking about academic success or behavior, what are the root causes to those things? What are the component variables that have to be in place for reading to take hold? Language has to be there. So reading and interventionists and SLPs become the downstream safety net for these upstream problems, right? So I love that idea that reading interventionists and SLPs are catching these difficulties that are popping up because students aren't responding to the interventions downstream. And that leads to a time when maybe the students aren't as malleable, aren't as receptive because we may have missed their window of language building. There is a profound early window when language goes exponential, and building it early matters. So we don't want to have systems ignorance in this case. Terrie and I talk a lot about systems ignorance when we talk about aligning our systems. And I am promoting today that in this year, as you ground yourself in this knowledge that language is this profound foundation, and that maybe we could have a course correction towards aligning systems to language and not word reading, we would have system intelligence. We would be using the wisdom of literacy research, the science of reading, to guide a movement and stewardship for a new future. Now, if oral language does not develop automatically for most children, and we have a continuous downstream effect of late identified language difficulties, also with dyslexia, developmental language disorders, the two most vulnerable identifications and the most prevalent identifications we have, then MTSS cannot begin with print. It has to begin with language. We want to find those students early because they need us to find them early. They deserve to be found early. So we must begin with language. So yesterday, I decided I'm just going to go scan the world out there and all publicly posted. So that's why I'm just sharing. It's all public stuff. This is someone's MTSS model. You'll notice that it focuses on social, emotional, behavior, academic. What I am profoundly impacted that this is a system. I went and looked and I said, do they even screen language? Since all three of those are underpinned by language, and I didn't find language anywhere in their assessment model. Then I went to this one, the social academic instructional groups, the SAG groups. In this document, I found no mention of language, while social, emotional, and academic all depend on language. Then I went to this model and I found that they have evidence-based core reading, but unless you understand that reading is language, you might miss that language is the foundation of all that you'll probably end up doing in academics, and therefore your interventions might hyper-focus on word reading. On and on it went. I didn't find language in anybody's model. I will give a shout out. I know some colleagues are on here from Livingston. I know your models have language in them now. And I'm grateful for that because we're evolving the work. So here's how we're going to reframe this work. And I want to help you guide this work, have courage to talk about this work, to really come in to let me foster and steward this understanding and this paradigm shift towards language. Why am I so passionate about this? Because as Ann Kaiser said at the Big Sky Literacy Summit in 2025, which you can have access to in the mentored recordings, that 3 years of age marks this hallmark time in a child's life where it's not a absolute deterministic age, yet it could be. And the inputs, interaction, and instruction they receive at that point on changes the trajectory or it does not change the trajectory. And if they are on a path of very limited language input, very limited language interaction, very limited language instruction, that path will impact them for the rest of their life, which can lead to their quality of life. If they'll graduate from high school, if they'll have a long-lasting relationship or marriage, if they'll have a college education, how much they get paid in work, all of it matters. So why we want to do that is to help us have the ability to let you stand in your knowing that the future could change by having a voice for something different. So how are we going to do that? This is something we all know very well, simple view of reading. Here's what I like to say. What if, remember 2000, Susan Moore taught me that these models should help us diagnose and prescribe. But I never saw oral language in this model. But if you read the Goff and Tumner article, oral language is present. The reason that you don't see it here is because this is a static model. It's not a developmental model. That's important to understand as you understand literacy research and the science of reading. Static models this is for an age span. I bet I didn't even know that in the beginning. This isn't for a 4-year-old. This is just about how reading, the model, the equation that gets us to reading comprehension. And it could be for a 90-year-old, it could be for a 6-year-old, but it's just saying that these are the components that are necessary to reach that final product. What we didn't understand, unless you read the article, unless you were informed by one like my mentor, Louisa Moats, that it is swimming in oral language. Okay? Oral language predicts these domains, is interrelated, continuously informs, and is a continuous variable in each one of these components. That's profound. That's a huge piece of the pie. So the next one, we know this one really well. The rope, right? Now, what Hollis wrote in 2001 is also this incredible piece of work that set the tone for decades of research afterwards, that language comes first. Yet in the model she created, the visual metaphor, she did not put language as the block builder to both strands of the reading rope. Now, if I'm an educator and I saw the simple view that's swimming in oral language and the rope model that is predicted by oral language, wouldn't I want to know more about oral language every time I moved into a data dialogue? Wouldn't I ask, like, well, gosh, we know their vocabulary is not, it's very poor or it's not enriched. Their verbal reasoning is really limited and their phonological development is really minimal. Why wouldn't I have gone and said, well, what's the story of their oral language? What do we need to do to develop that language brain to create the wiring that is the foundation for the interaction and instruction that can follow? So I love asking that question because we need a causal developmental model so that you can use those two models I just showed you just to kind of reify the fact that language is a part of both of them. And all the authors write that in their documentation and the articles that preceded these models. So now this is the new model that says, hey, this is a developmental extension of the simple view. It just helps us understand that it's a developmental continuum. They're not opposing each other. They are this is an extension of. It's the reading as language model. And I'm just going to bring it in. This is Snolling and Hume 2025. They introduced it at the Big Sky Literacy Summit. Also a great talk that is part of the mentor recordings. Um, what I want you to see here is that this is a continuous variable that I'm trying to exemplify. Language is a continuous variable on the bottom that interacts with your ability to learn words. It interacts with your ability to become fluent. It interacts with your ability to become a good comprehender. It, you are not ever without language being a predictor or a consistent variable in the outcome of your reading. So language is always a continuous variable. In fact, I like this way of talking about it better. In this model, the waves of literacy development depend on the source it comes from, which is the language, the rich language ocean that you have within your reservoirs. Terrie Noland talked about it, Big Sky. You have a word well, and I'm just going to extend that to say you have a language well. It's either really deep or it's moderate or it's shallow. And if you come with a shallow well, which is more like a mud puddle, you don't get a huge wave of literacy development. You get a very minimal ripple. I mean, so if you don't have this enriched input, interaction, and instruction as an early child, your language brain hasn't been built to the level that's sufficient to then tack on the reading brain and the writing brain. Okay. Powerful stuff. I really, really can grab onto this. Now think of the simple view. And when I said it's swimming in language, this model is the developmental extension of that to say, yeah, that language reservoir is what gets us the development of each aspect of literacy as we develop through the academic coursework. So part 3, just applying this, treating our MTSS-LD. So we want to have the systems. We want to be the leaders that steward this work into the future. To have languages have systems that are informed by language development, not void of language development. We want to truly acknowledge that language is a protection factor and a risk factor, as Hugh Katz and Slomowitz and Petcher and everybody have talked about it in risk resilience models. We also know in the new dyslexia definition that language has this underlying difficulty in language is very common in a student with dyslexia. In fact, there's a lot of comorbidity with dyslexia and language. This is a language-based learning difference. So we want to be able to find those kids early. Why? They're the most prevalent and most vulnerable kids. We don't find them by teaching them words. Okay, we find them by screening their language and teaching language. So here's what I had the privilege of experiencing in Greenville, South Carolina. This is a group of leaders and scholars that I met just 2 years ago, this February. So it's just under 2 years ago. Walked in, the superintendent's like, Nell, 88% of our kids can't even read words in 2nd grade. So that red box down here that says 16 right now, in 2nd grade, 88% of the scholars couldn't read words. I took a breath. I looked at the curricular resources. I looked at instructional practices. I looked at the schedules. I did everything, a good coach would do. And I said, okay, we have early learning environments. Let's start with language. And I actually reached out to researchers. I actually asked if we could use a screener just to get our bearings straight. Middle of the year, it's February. By March, we were screening in language at 4 years of age. Nobody knew why we were going to do that, but I just said, let's just start. And we're also going to start learning about a curriculum that's free called Let's Know. And it's by the Language and Reading Research Consortium, a great study, longitudinal on comprehension matters with Tiffany Hogan, Hugh Katz, Kate Kane, Ala Taiba, Mindy Bridges. They had done this work to show that if you taught Tier 1 language, it impacted all of reading. The curriculum sits on the Ohio State's website. You too can access it. What we found was that we're going to make sure the curriculum was appropriate for the scholars we were teaching. We updated it. We have a high Spanish-speaking population, and we also have Black children and Latino children, their whole population. So we addressed the curriculum. We made sure the curriculum was ready to go. Teachers started teaching it by, I'd say March, April. By May, we had Tier 2 instruction in place and Nuffield Early Language Intervention and evidence-based protocol. We had Tier 1 in place and evidence-based protocol. So then year 2, we had all of those at the start of the year. This data right here that you're seeing is after these 4-year-olds received 40 minutes of intentional oral language evidence-based instruction and evidence-based Tier 2 instruction identified by an evidence-based reliable and valid oral language screener. 88% of the kids in second grade couldn't read words 2 years ago. But this year in kindergarten, 66% arrived at benchmark or above on Dibble's Eighth. And y'all know that's kind of hard if you've been doing Dibble's Eighth or any CBM measure when you're in 100% free and reduced price lunch and you are 80% Spanish first language. We had never seen, I hadn't seen data like this in a community where we just focused on language. Okay, we did about 10 to 15 minutes of alphabetic knowledge building and phonologic building, but here's what we really did differently. This is the part that blows your mind. We screen language in Spanish and English, and so now you might have data out there from everything from Acadians to FastBridge to Dibbles to Ames Web Plus to whatever you're using in a CBM protocol. But these students who are in the yellow zone, that risk, we found that 7 of them had really good language. What kind of intervention do they have that they are going to need? So of that 17%, 47% of them already had good language. So those 7 were the word reading intervention candidates, right? But these 8, they demonstrated that they have risk in language first. So they don't just need a word reading intervention. They need us to focus on building language as well. And I couldn't confirm that we had ruled out Spanish because Spanish screener is brand new as of May. And so we ensured we got Spanish screener for our most at-risk students. So of the 16% that were most at risk in this 86 cohort, 1 child was very good in language. So that's another clear case for just needing word reading instruction. So that is 8 students that need word reading instruction. While over here, the other students in this group, the 13 of them, they need language, not just language. They're Spanish first language students that are developing English. So we need to develop their language in a new language, and we also need to develop their word reading. Profound different protocol. That was a huge awakening. And in December in mentorship, we said we're going to keep the main thing the main thing. In this case, the main thing is language development. That was a huge paradigm shift for our data analysis teams. But now we have the data to show what differentiates a word reading instructional protocol versus a language or a language and word reading protocol. And this is going to help us understand who the most at-risk students are. This is a Snowling work. It's a Wellcome study, longitudinal, that followed Hollis Scarborough's Reading Rope original 2001 study. So this is about 2 decades of work. And this is a group of preschoolers through 8 years of age. What they found is that students that are typical, 7% going to be dyslexic, family risk, 26% going to be dyslexic. But the most important aspect of this research is that 66% of students who have a language difficulty go on to have dyslexia. So if I screen language first, I find students with language and dyslexia quicker, the most vulnerable students. And this data set, it should just rock your world. It rocks my world. This is 5-year-old data. 5-year-olds. We're not waiting for lots of interventions and word reading to figure this out, for them to not comprehend. We already know they have language comprehension problems. The simple view of reading says it's word reading times language comprehension. But I needed to figure out how they were comprehending language. And for the first time, we have the tools that help us do that. So now we know who those kids are, and we can find our most vulnerable kids early and get them interventions when their brain is most malleable and most receptive to that change. So how are you going to activate your genius around this idea and steward this information into your ecosystems? I want you to ponder that for a hot minute, like dream big, like if you're a teacher, could you study a language instructional protocol and just see how it looks in direct instruction? And like I said, what if we would have taken the whole language era and just said, you know what? Contextualized language instruction actually now is extremely evidence-based, but we need to have it to be explicit, systematic, contextualized language. Now, that would have been an evolution that would have changed the future because what we did is we went into reading first and we really hit into how do we teach words, but contextualized, explicit, systematic language is also what word reading is a part of. And so I really ponder that. Can't change the past, but we can change the future, and we can be stewards to that new message. And we can activate this genius, and we can take one step forward to reshaping how that MTSS, that prevention system that we have in our schools, can have a different lens, right? So, with that, I'm just gonna hit exit and stop that and see what y'all have to say. Thank you for hanging with me through that. Now, I held to my word. I gave you some deep knowledge, lots of evolved thinking that I've been doing because I really want to be the person that stands in that truth. I really think we are in a course correction time, and I'm very excited about this because the evidence is clear. Our researchers are very aware that the time is right and we can help shift this future. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hopefully, all of you were like, okay, I'm going to stand in my knowing. I'm going to stand in my knowing because I'm knowing. I'm knowing something big, and it is your responsibility to bring it back and let everybody else know. We can't keep things hidden just for us. Yeah. Good job. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I know that what this really has is it's an opportunity for Terry and I to share something we love deeply. So I'm gonna just bring it there and bring it home is something about raising our leadership lid, right, Terry?
Absolutely. You know, we have been teaching about the law of the lid from John Maxwell. It's the very first chapter in his book, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. We've been teaching it for several years now, and just teaching that alone until we also heard just recently this past summer, the raising of the floor. So
Mhm.
it's both. It's
Mhm.
both of these things. And the law of the lid says that when I get better, everybody else is going to get better. So if I stand in my knowing around language, now listen, I know, I understand that so many of us are like, I hear you. This is profound information, but I'm not so secure in my knowing just yet to go and make the claim and make the cause. But this is where you elevate your thinking, get around people, put the words in your mouth, you raise your lid, and then everybody else is going to start to hear you, is going to start to understand, is going to start to come along because you are getting better. And when you get better, not only do other people around you get better, but the system at large gets better because now our system can attend to the entirety of what we have only partially seen with word reading for so long.
And Terry, you know what I love about the law of the lid is when we really think about we're all leaders, regardless of the roles we're playing in this journey of literacy transformation across the nation, advocates, first grade teachers, fifth grade teachers, coaches, consultants, State Department coaches, wherever you are, this is about how you're thinking. It's how you're making decisions. And I love thinking about, Theresa saying, be that fire, what kind of firecracker are you? This is where your lid is. Like, meaning you're going to look different. Your lid is going to be at a different level and it's going to rise according to your living into your genius and your potential. And as Dawny said, just like just own you and the knowledge you have to share and become, because you're going to create the conditions for others to lead. And I love watching teachers raise their leadership lid in their classroom because then students have experiences of becoming leaders and stewards in their classroom. So this is applicable to everybody. And this is what happens when you raise a lid. You can have great teachers, You can have strong research, you can have solid programs, but you can still hit a ceiling if you have all those things. And I think a lot of you out there are in experiences and have been or will be where a lot of things are really going well. And you're still like, why are we still at like 82%? Or why are, because Terry and I have a little bit more to add to that. We think that it's not just about raising your leadership lid. You also have to, um, I'm just going to say, cut the tethering to old beliefs or habits or curriculums or the way you've done things in MTSS. And what you do is you raise the floor. So you don't just raise the lid, you also raise the floor. And what this means is you move into something called sustainable performance that improves when the minimum standard of capacity, clarity, and conditions rises for everyone. Okay, so that is when you are leading in a system and you realize that one teacher's got it going on, then all of a sudden the whole team's got it going on, but then you have three other teams that don't have it going on. And you're like, wait a second, to have sustainable performance means we're going to have a minimum standard of capacity, clarity, and conditions that rises for everybody. So you can move towards language understanding with one teacher or with you being the first one, but your ultimate goal is to keep stewarding that message, to keep raising your lid and raising the floor for everybody by being a knowledge bearer, by being the teacher, by empowering others. And that doesn't mean like shoving it down their throats or anything. We're talking about there's a steady consistency in this, and it sometimes can take years. Terry, you want to add to that?
Yeah, it's the quiet steadiness that I mentioned earlier. It's that quiet steadiness, that drum beat. That's who we are because I promise you, there are not, man, tomorrow, Monday, bam, pull the lever, we got it all going on. It is your quiet steadiness of raising your own game, your growth, your lid. And then what happens is that I'm not going to fall to old beliefs. I'm not going to allow a outdated MTSS system to define what we're going to do. I'm going to elevate my floor, which is eventually going to elevate the floor of others. This is time intensive. This is consistency of message. This is where consistency will compound over time. And Dawny mentioned it. Like, man, this is day one of this year. When we look back on day 365, I guarantee you, if you keep the drumbeat going, you're going to see massive changes.
And, Terry, as you talked about that, I thought if any of you out there are leading this work and you're showing up in staff meetings or you're showing up at state level meetings and you're like, you know what, I'd like to recommunicate this understanding that I gained, and if you want, write me and I can share some of the graphics that, to talk about it through a developmental model and how, what if language would have been on the table the whole time? We would have always asked these questions. And so now, what are the questions we want to ask for the future to reshape our future and course correct a little bit to account for language, right? And remember, this is recorded as well, so you can share anything from it as well. And to close this, our call to action is really to raise the your own lid. Today, you've all shown us that you're raising your lid. And by doing that, you're allowing those around you to keep growing too. And so we don't transform literacy by pushing the ceiling higher. We do it by raising the leadership lid and the system-wide floor. So language development becomes the norm, not the exception. Okay. That's ultimately our desire, our goal, and to share that with you today. And we hope that you've been inspired. We built through, Theresa's firework story and really being that unique, authentic self, and Dawny's let them so you can rise into letting yourself become more yourself. And Terrie's thinking brain, really, this takes critical thinking. And then you get slammed into like, whoa, now I'm critically thinking about the systems I operate in and how I can be a steward of new information. Hopefully, this day has inspired you, opened you up to some new thoughts. Dawny and Terrie, what are some of the new thoughts that you have going on? And we'd love to hear from all of you out there.
Well, something you
Well,
just said, and I
go
dropped it
ahead,
in the
Donna.
chat. Something you said, oh, Terry, you can go.
No, Donnie, go.
Oh, something you said now that, and I just dropped it in the chat, that we have to transform our thinking of the norm. And so I think we're used to status quo so much that it has become, we're desensitized to what it could be. And so we have to realize and kind of reshift our thinking of what norms should be. And so I think this is a good time on day one to do that. And so I encourage you as I'm thinking about what my new norm should be and how I can continue to move forward with that this year. So thank you all. There's much to think about in my thinking chair. As Aaron said, I need to get in my thinking chair and really start thinking about how I can be a part of this movement.
Well,
Awesome.
Donnie, what my whole thinking through all of this is all the way from Teresa to you to all the way to the end here is once again, if not you, then who? And when
Mhm.
I say you, you showed up today. This thinking that was revealed to you today is not thinking that is prevalent around this country. And so, if not us, a collective group of fired up, mad individuals, then who else, who's going to get this job done? So it's the let me of it. Let me be a thinker. Let me stand in my knowing. Let me be the bearer of the good news of what is to come. And so like that is the big responsibility for me leaving this session today.
Yeah, that's good.
Anybody else want to share with us today? I would love to hear some of your thoughts.
I will. I'm like
Yeah.
sitting on my couch, but I'm going to share. Um, so many things. I love the idea that we need to release what's inside of us already, that we don't have to always be feeling like we don't have the skills that we need. There's so much knowledge that I was thinking like I probably have outdated um, strategies to communicate. So I'm like loving this idea of re-communicating and sharing what I know in a way that's actually impactful rather than whatever else it has been. But it's, not, it's, the Cassandra complex where it's like, but it seems like nobody else knows. Like, I feel like that's real. And how do you deal with that? Like, how do you have a deep understanding and then you're around with others who aren't ready yet for that information, or it means they have to change, or I feel like you've given me a lot to consider about continuing my slow march forward and thinking about my modes of communication. And maybe I just need to listen or, reconsider. But so many wonderful things. And I'm so thankful that I was here today. I needed this.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anybody else want to share? Sue or Lynn, can I beg you to voice a vibe of think about where we've come from and knowing Lynn being an SLP and that idea of rich contextualized language and whole language and like what if we would have had just a different messaging about how to contextualize it and instruct it and screen it and that pendulum swing versus I think about that now and I'm grateful that I finally have enough awareness that I can see the literacy research path and the arc of research and that we're arriving in a new time space and how to better communicate that. So how did it land for you as an SLP, Lynn?
So it warms my heart to hear you share this, of course. And I think back to my 45 years in this profession and think that I started that journey in the area of language. And what you're sharing, yes, was always one of those missing links that we didn't articulate clearly. I think, though, that the design that Colorado Reading First, when I go back to one of the modules we actually created, was oral language. And so we did seed it, shall I say, and the visual model that we were initially creating had oral language in the middle, and then oral language on the outside, so that it was actually capturing what you, all four of you, articulated over these 2 hours. And so the resounding connections um, is critical. I think we need to think strategically in all of our sites. How do we value SLPs? How do we bring them to the center of the conversations? So often we were behind the scenes. We weren't understood in the influence that we could correct in the discussions and to apply our discussion to lead us to where you're articulating some of the key parts today and what you presented in ASHA. Hopefully is going to continue to resonate beyond the SLPs as well. So I think that your journey has come full circle in many respects. Susan Moore was one of my professors as well. So when you said that, I was like, oh my gosh, we are bonded, Danielle, in so many different ways that come to light at different times in our journeys. And so I celebrate what you all of you share. And we need to continue to march forward. And probably why I'm not ready to retire, even though I should at some point in my career. But thank you really for what you all presented. It was a gift to so many and to others who will get to listen to this.
Awesome. Thanks, Lynn. I want to be honest. I don't think we had the evidence to show how to do oral language tier one and oral language intervention at the time of whole language. And it took for us to get to where we are. There's always a journey, and actually, 20 hindsight's 2020, right? So now we're at a point where we have the ability to screen reliably and with validity. We have the tools that are evidence-based, actually clear evidence for effect, which are very different than common ELA curriculums. It will reshape the market around how ELAs are built in the future because now we know more about language. And if we're screening for language, then the actual curricular resources have to have language within them, right? So
Okay.
it's an exciting future. Nothing's gone wrong. Everything's going right, which is meaningful.
It's about growth.
All right. Any other, Rebecca, the thinking brain is really resonating with me today, right? Think about how I can strengthen and expand my good thinking to lead to action and to support others. Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. We are so grateful for your time. You've given 2 hours of this day to grow. Couldn't be more grateful. Please share it with anybody and everybody. We also really welcome you to mentorship or grab the mentor recordings if you are interested in continuing to learn from some of the mentor talks. There's always great things that the mentors, researchers have to say that you might want to deepen that learning with or re-listen to. So we will be sure to share those out in an email and share this link as well in an email and on socials. So thank you, everyone. We're very grateful. Dawny or Terrie, have any thoughts? Closing thoughts?
My closing thought is we love you all. It's I mean these faces and what a day. Thank you for being here.
Yes, yes, thank you. If not now, then when? So let's do it. We have a
Amen.
year. We have a year ahead of us. We got this.
This is day one. Happy New Year's
Day one.
Transformation Day, everybody. Go have a great day. Bye-bye.